This is not only the story of Ishaq alayhi salam, this is a true history, the story of the divide between Jews and Arabs. Two brothers, one father, but two completely different paths. One lineage continued in the lands of Sham, the other began in the deserts of Mecca, and over time this separation turned into something much bigger. A difference in belief, a division of identity between the descendants of Ishaq alayhi salam and the descendants of Ismail alayhi salam. One side accepted both brothers. They saw both as prophets. The other side excluded one, saw him as secondary, and over time pushed him completely away. In this video, you will watch the life of Ishaq alayhi salam together with a comparison of the Torah and the Quran. You are on Religious Story TV. We continue the series of prophet stories. To not miss this series, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and write in the comments which country you are watching from. If you are ready, let's begin. Around the years about 2000 BC, on the lands of Palestine inside a tent, this story began. Ibrahim alayhi salam was the name of a man unlike any other in history. He challenged his people, broke the idols, and declared war against false gods. He was thrown into the fire, but he did not burn. He was sent into exile. He spent his whole life for his mission, calling people to the truth, but they kept turning away from him. And Ibrahim alayhi salam was becoming older. There had to be someone after him to tell about Allah. Deep in his heart, with great love and mercy, he wanted one thing, a child, a righteous child. My Lord, grant me a child from the righteous. Safat 100. But this prayer was not accepted immediately, because Allah gives great blessings after great tests. And in the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam, it would be the same. Many years passed, and one day, a new door opened in his life. He went to the land of a king. This king was powerful, but his heart was closed to the truth. When he heard about the beauty of Ibrahim alayhi salam's wife Sarah, he wanted to take her. But Allah protected Sarah. Every time the king tried to approach her, his hands were stopped, his power was taken away. At that moment, he understood. This was not an ordinary woman. Fear entered his heart. In the end, he let Sarah go. Not only did he release her, he also gave her a woman to serve her. This woman's name was Hajar. And at this point, the direction of destiny began to change, because Hajar would not remain just a servant. In time, she would have a very different place in the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Sarah had not been able to have a child for many years, and she felt this deeply. But in her heart, there was great submission. And one day, she made a very difficult decision. She said to Ibrahim alayhi salam, "Marry Hajar. Maybe Allah will give you a child through her." This was one of the heaviest words that could come from a woman's heart, but at the same time, it was a sign of great submission. Ibrahim alayhi salam accepted this offer, and he married Hajar. From this marriage, Ismail was born. And so, the first answer to the prayer of Ibrahim alayhi salam came after many years of waiting. A child had come. But there was another side to this story. Ibrahim alayhi salam's first wife, Sarah. For many years she had been patient with Ibrahim alayhi salam. She had gone into exile with him. She had passed through many tests with him. But in her heart, there was a quiet sadness, because she had no child. Now Ibrahim had a child, but that child was not from her. This is not a burden that is easy for a human heart to carry. But Sarah remained patient. She carried it silently inside her. And at this point, the direction of the story changed once again. One night, the door was knocked. 3 guests, but they were not ordinary guests. The Quran describes this scene like this. Has the news of the guests of Ibrahim reached you? Hud 69. Ibrahim welcomed them inside. He prepared food, but something was strange. They were not eating. And at that moment, fear entered the heart of Ibrahim, because in those times a guest who did not eat could be an enemy, but they spoke, "Do not be afraid." And then they said the sentence that would change history, "We give you good news of a wise son." This good news was not only for Ibrahim, it was for Sarah. In a moment, time stopped. Sarah heard it, and she laughed. The Quran clearly says, "And his wife was standing, and she laughed. Then we gave her good news of Ishaq," Hud 71. But this laughter was not only from joy, it was from surprise. This laughter was the moment when the impossible was broken, because she was old, because she was barren, and because, according to human thinking, this was not possible. But this is exactly where the divine story begins, because when Allah wills, nothing is impossible. Allah is the one who creates from nothing. While Allah often creates things with their causes, sometimes He creates without any cause, directly from nothing. Throughout history, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim traditions have agreed on the name of this child, but there have been deep differences for centuries about who this child is, what he represents, and what kind of legacy he carries. The Torah presents him as the ancestor through whom the chosen seed continues, but the Quran places him as one of the links in a wider chain of prophethood. Both traditions honor him, love him, and place him at the center of their sacred history. But the Quran goes one step further and says this: the father of Ishaq alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, was neither a Jew nor a Christian. He was a Hanif Muslim. He was a man of pure Tawhid, living with his heart turned only to Allah. And of course, this is also true for Ishaq. This child was given as good news under the stars that night. Sarah laughed. Ibrahim was amazed. The angels left, and the universe prepared to carry a great trust. Soon, a sound would rise from that tent, the first cry of a baby. That sound would mix with the tears of Ibrahim, but this time the tears were not from pain, but from gratitude. Praise be to Allah, who has granted me, in my old age, Ismail and Ishaq. Indeed, my Lord is the one who hears prayers. Ibrahim 39. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism also differ on the issue of sacrifice. In the Torah, it is stated that the one intended to be sacrificed was Ishaq. The idea behind this is that the sacrificed child is seen as more superior and chosen. Because Yaqub and many other Jewish prophets come from the lineage of Ishaq, they argue that the sacrificed child was Ishaq. In Jewish thought, Ismail is not given much importance. The focus is mainly on Ishaq. The main reason for this is that his father, Ibrahim alayhi salam, took Ismail to the lands of Mecca, and the lineage of the Arabs began there. Later, from this lineage came the final Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because of this outcome, a stance was developed against Islam. Ismail was seen as the son of the second wife, and it was claimed that he could not be the carrier of the prophetic lineage. In some interpretations, the idea that lineage continues through the mother was also used to support this view. In fact, this situation reminds us of a tension that has repeated throughout history. Just as jealousy and hostility appeared among the sons of Yaqub because Yusuf had a different mother, a similar division was created here as well. Also, the fact that the final Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came from the lineage of Ismail made them defend more strongly that this event belonged to Ishaq. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, pointing to his ancestor Ismail alayhi salam and his father Abdullah, who were chosen for sacrifice. I am the son of two who were to be sacrificed. Hakim 4048. Now let us return to the story. How did Ishaq grow up in such an environment? How does the childhood of a prophet pass? Which words shaped him? Narrations say that even in his cradle, the remembrance of Allah was echoing. The first words whispered into his ears were Allah. Ibrahim alayhi salam was not only a father, he was like a walking university. Every action was a lesson, every word was a lesson, every silence was a lesson. According to narrations, Ibrahim would take little Ishaq in his arms and carry him under the night sky, showing him the stars. Look, my son, he would say, this huge tent has no pillars. It is Allah who holds tents without pillars. A child who grows in the arms of such a father learns Tawheed not from a book, but from life itself. So how does the Torah describe this childhood? In Genesis chapter 21, it speaks about tension between Ismail and Ishaq. It is narrated that the older brother Ismail looked down on or mocked the young Ishaq. Because of this, Sarah asks Ibrahim to send Hajar and Ismail away. The Torah tells this scene in a dramatic way. Ibrahim becomes sad. God tells him to follow Sarah's words, and Hajar and Ismail are left in the desert. The Quran does not directly address this tension. It is not possible to read the relationship between Ishaq and Ismail in the Quran through jealousy or conflict. On the contrary, the Quran mentions both brothers with high status, both are prophets, and both are part of the blessed lineage of Ibrahim. From a theological point of view, this difference is very important. In the Torah narrative, Ishaq is the chosen son and Ismail is set aside. In the Quran, both are chosen. One is not raised by lowering the other, but both come from the same divine light. This difference stands at the center of the deep identity discussion between Jews and Arabs throughout history. As Dr. Shabir Ali correctly points out, those who wrote the Torah were the descendants of Ishaq, and naturally, history is written by the winners. For this reason, Ishaq is highlighted in the Torah, while Ismail remains in the background. The Quran restores this balance. It does not lower Ishaq to raise Ismail, but presents both within the same divine clarity. So who else was with Ishaq during his childhood? Because he was not raised only by his father. His mother, Sarah, was also a deep soul in whose shadow he grew. Sarah is mentioned as a noble woman, both in the Torah tradition and in the Quran. She faced an impossibility with a smile, carried a miracle in her womb, and nursed a prophet. For a child, such a mother is one of the greatest blessings in life. As Ishaq grew, the world around him was also taking shape. Around 2000 BC, in the lands of Palestine and Sham, more than one prophet was living at the same time. His father Ibrahim was in Palestine. His brother Ismail was in the mountains of Faran near Mecca. His cousin Lut was in the region of Jordan. 4 prophets were living at the same time in the same era, aware of each other. This tells us something very striking about history. Even that time was not like paradise. Even in an age when 4 prophets were present, people were still worshipping idols, committing dhulm, and bowing down to stones they made with their own hands. What did this mean for Ishaq? He understood this. Those who follow the truth are few. The path of truth is not the path of the crowd, and Tawheed has always been kept alive by the resistance of a small light against a great madness. Even as a child, Ishaq saw this reality with his own eyes. He saw the tiredness in his father's eyes, the weight of the message, and how costly patience truly is. According to narrations, Ishaq practiced the religious teachings he learned from his father in his own life. He grew up in the land of Sham. Ishaq served his mother and father for many years. According to a narration reported in Hakim's Mustadrak, the appearance of Ishaq was described as follows: tall, dark-eyed, wheat-colored skin, a beautiful face, and clear speech. When he grew old, both his hair and beard became completely white. His character and appearance resembled his father Ibrahim alayhi salam. Hakim Mustadrak 2/607, a son carrying the image of his father. Not only the lines on his face, but also the shape of his soul seemed the same. He inherited Ibrahim's patience, trust in Allah, and submission. This inheritance cannot be bought with money or taken by force. It is gained only through sujood, through dua, and through being able to say, "Command me, my Lord," without fear, even when the knife is at the throat. When the Quran speaks about Ishaq, it uses a very special chain of qualities. "And remember our servants Ibrahim, Ishaq, and Yaqub, men of strength and insight. Indeed, we chose them for a pure quality, the remembrance of the hereafter, and indeed, they are among the chosen and the best in our sight." Sad 45. Three things: strength, insight, sincerity. These three words form the portrait of a prophet. Strength is not only the strength of the body, it is the strength of will, patience, and resistance. Insight is not the sight of the eyes, but the vision of the heart. And sincerity is perhaps the rarest and most valuable thing. To do everything only for Allah, without expecting an audience, without seeking applause, without needing praise. Ishaq grew up with these three qualities. The hands that raised him were blessed, the land that nurtured him was sacred, and the atmosphere around him carried the weight of prophethood. In such an environment, he lived a childhood that perhaps no other child experienced. The Torah, however, sometimes describes Ishaq during these years as a very human, even weak character. In Genesis chapter 26, it is told that Ishaq, like his father, introduced his wife as "my sister" in a foreign land because he feared being killed due to her beauty. Some Torah commentators see this as a moment showing human weakness. Islamic tradition does not describe prophets with such weakness. The Quran emphasizes that prophets are protected from sins and are given the quality of isma. This difference is not only theological, it reflects a deep difference in how the two religions understand prophets. Ishaq grew up. Now he had to stand on his own and speak with his own voice. Prophethood was not a crown to be received. It was a responsibility as heavy as a mountain placed on the shoulders, and one day that responsibility would come to him. But before that, Ibrahim alayhi salam closed his eyes, and Ishaq remained in this world without him, not truly alone, because he was surrounded by the blessing of Allah. But he would no longer hear his father's warm voice, see his strong hands, or look into the deep light in his eyes. The greatest mission of Ishaq was not only to change a people, he was going to build a generation, his son Yaqub, and Yaqub's son Yusuf, and this chain would continue for centuries. The Quran says, "And we granted him Ishaq and Yaqub, and we made each of them righteous." Anbiya 72. This verse tells something very deep. The success of Ishaq was not only his own life, his success was also those who came after him. But not everything was so easy, because Ishaq did not live in a comfortable world. There was idolatry all around him. People were worshipping things they made from stone. And this was not only a belief, it was a system. It had an economy, it had politics, it had power. And this system did not want to change. The first conflict was beginning because Ishaq had grown up, and now it was time to speak. Like his father, he began with gentle words. "O my people, there is no God except Allah, and what you worship has no benefit for you, neither in this world nor in the next." But people were not ready, because truth always disturbs. A man stood up and said, "Will you teach us about provision?" This was not a simple question. It was the beginning of rebellion, because people do not want to accept the truth, especially when the system they are used to will be shaken. Ishaq did not become angry. He did not shout. He only pointed to the sky. "Look, Which idol holds the rope of these clouds? A single sentence can be enough to shake a whole system, and they had no answer to this question. But this was only the beginning, because some of the people started to think. But the palace became uncomfortable, and this is where the story changes. Because speaking to the people is easy, but speaking to power has a price. The greatest mission of Ishak was not only to change a people, he was going to build a generation. His son, Yaqub, and Yaqub's son, Yusuf. And this chain would continue for centuries. The Quran says, "And we granted him Ishak and Yaqub, and we made each of them righteous." Anbiya 72. This verse tells something very deep. The success of Ishak was not only his own life, his success was also those who came after him. But not everything was so easy, because Ishak did not live in a comfortable world. He was not facing only an idolatrous people, but a dark, oppressive system. It had an economy, it had politics, it had power, and this system did not want to change. And in front of him was a man just like Firaun and Namrud, a man with power and oppression. His name would be remembered in history as Haris. He was taking people's wealth, he was ruling over them, and he believed he was untouchable. And Ishak stood in front of him, alone. "Stop the oppression," he said, "or Allah will stop you." These words echoed through the walls of the palace. Everyone fell silent, because no one had the courage to say such words, but a prophet cannot hide the truth. What is interesting is this. Scenes like this are not found in the Bible. There, Ishak is shown as a more passive character, but in Islamic narrations, he is an active caller to the truth. After these calls, the words of Ishak touched one heart, but they also filled another heart with anger. Because truth does two things. It either softens a person or makes them even harder. And that day, a decision was made. This man would be silenced. But there was something they did not know. A prophet can be alone, but he is never defenseless. The decision was made. One man alone was threatening a whole system, and that system had turned into a fear that was preparing its own end. Because there is a truth that never changes throughout history. When truth speaks, those in power become disturbed. Ishak was no longer just a caller, he was seen as a threat. Whispers were spreading through the palace walls. "Stop him, silence him, or people will change." But their real fear was this. People were starting to think, and a thinking person can no longer be controlled. Ishak was alone. He had no army around him, no group of supporters, no worldly power, but he had something they could never have, a certain faith. When the Quran speaks about the prophets, it especially highlights this quality. They were among the patient and the righteous. Anbiya 85. This patience was not passive waiting, it was a determination that could walk into fire. Haris, the oppressive ruler, did not call Ishak to his court because he was afraid. Ishak himself went to him. This is a very important detail, because truth goes to the door of power. Power does not come to the door of truth. He entered, he did not bow, he did not fear, and he spoke. "Will the stones you made with your own hands be your Lord, or the one who holds the heavens, Allah?" At that moment, time stopped. Something happened inside Haris, because he also knew. Deep inside, he knew the truth. But the problem was this. Accepting the truth meant losing everything: power, throne, authority. And here, the greatest battle of humanity begins, between truth and ego. In the Bible, these inner conflicts are described differently. There, Ishak is shown as a more obedient and quiet figure, especially in the story of sacrifice. He is silent. But in Islamic narrations, prophets are not only obedient, they are also fighters for the truth. This difference changes the spirit of the story. Haris made his decision: kill him. It was that simple. because throughout history, those who speak the truth have always been silenced. The soldiers came closer, but Ishak did not run. He did not step back. He did not shout. He only raised his hands. Dua, the greatest weapon. O Allah, the one who turns hearts, I am only calling to your path. The judgment now belongs to you. This was not just words. It was the highest level of submission. And then something happened. Nature responded. The sky darkened, the wind rose, the earth trembled. A storm came down upon the palace. This is a classic type of miracle narration. But what matters here is not the physical side of the event, but its message. Power is not in human hands. The Quran explains such situations with a general principle. Allah supports whom He wills. Rum 5. And Haris collapsed to his knees. The man he had just wanted to kill, now he was crying in front of him, asking for forgiveness. And at that moment, a tyrant changed. Ishak lifted him up. He did not shout, he did not scold him, he only said, "If you repent, you too can be saved." This is the difference of the prophets. They are not sent for revenge, but to correct. But the story did not end, because not everyone was like Haris. Some still did not believe, and they wanted something greater. The second challenge was coming. If you are truly a prophet, move this mountain. This request was not new. Throughout history, people have always asked for the same thing, a spectacle. But there was a problem. Faith is not built by spectacle. Ishak did not answer immediately. First, he made wudu. Then he went into sujud. This is very important, because he did not turn to people but to Allah. And according to narrations, the mountain moved, but nothing changed. Those who did not believe still did not believe. Because the problem was not the evidence. The problem was the heart. The Quran says it clearly. It is not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts. Hajj 46. Sources also report that Ishak alayhi salam was given remarkable miracles. It is narrated that animals spoke to him. A fox, a gazelle, and a goat testified to his prophethood. They said, "You are the messenger of Allah." This miracle is in harmony with the spirit of the Quran, because everything created by Allah obeys His command. Stone, earth, mountains, animals, all are under His command. Only human beings with their free will sometimes turn away from that command. In another narration, it is reported that the sheep touched by Ishak gave birth to countless lambs. When he prayed over diseased skins, they were healed. The miracle of every prophet speaks in the language that his people understand. The people of that time lived through animal husbandry. For them, blessing was the most real thing. The miracle of Ishak also spoke that language, but it must also be remembered. All these miracles are only tools beside the main mission of a prophet. They are not the goal, but a door. The real message is Tawheed. The real mission is to turn people away from stone, gold, and status and direct them to Allah. Ishak lived for this mission. He stood for this mission. He spoke for this mission. The Quran honors this attitude of his in this way, and we placed blessings upon him and upon Ishak, and among their descendants are those who do good and those who clearly wrong themselves. Safat 113. This verse also carries the tragedy of a prophet. From his lineage, both the good and the bad will come. A prophet does not force people. He opens the door. Entering is the choice of the human. And Ishak saw both smiling faces and mocking faces among his people, both those whose hearts softened like Haris and those who held tightly to their stones with stubbornness. But he looked at all of them with the same mercy, because the heart of a prophet is like a light that never closes its door, even if its visitors are few. And Ishak understood. This struggle would not be short. This was not a war. This was a long path. And this path would make him not only a prophet, but the founder of a legacy. But now, the real question begins. How would Ishak raise his own children? And how would that generation turn into such a powerful legacy? Ishak was no longer just a caller. Now, he was a father. And this was the moment when the most critical period of his life began, because changing a people is difficult, but raising a generation is much harder. Ishak had two sons, Yaqub and Esav, Is. They were twins, but they were not the same. One was quiet, deep, strong in his inner world. His name was Yaqub. The other was strong, physically impressive, more tough. His name was Esav. And here, the true wisdom of Ishak appeared. What do people do today? They try to make their children the same. Be like your brother. Think like him. Act like him. But Ishak did the opposite. He did not compare them. He did not make them compete. He completed them. He said to Yaqub, "Your silence is your depth." He said to Esav, "Your strength must be used for justice." Do you know what this means? It means this: not everyone has to be the same, but everyone can be on the right path. The Quran says about Ishak and his lineage, "And we made them leaders guiding by our command." Anbiya 73. This verse is very important because Ishak was not only a father, but a trainer of leaders. But here is a very critical difference. In the Bible, there is a serious conflict between Yaqub and Esav. It is even told that Yaqub deceived Esav and took his right. This narration has been widely debated, but in Islamic narrations, these events are either not present or are understood very differently, because in Islam, prophets and their chosen lineage are protected in their moral character. Ishak did not only raise his children, he made dua for them. This is the most critical detail. In the Quran, the dua of Ibrahim is mentioned, "My Lord, make me and my descendants among those who establish prayer." Ibrahim 40. This dua includes Ishak, and Ishak continues this path. It also includes Ismail, and through this line, it includes the final Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and those from his lineage. The greatest success of Ishak was not his own life, but his lineage. His son Yaqub, then Yusuf, then Musa, then Dawood, then Suleiman, then Isa. This list is not just names. This is one of the greatest chains in history. And at the beginning of this chain is Ishak. The life of Ishak asks this question: what will remain after me? Because real success is not your life, but the impact you leave behind. But the story does not end peacefully here, because every generation brings a new test. Yaqub was not an ordinary child. His destiny was much heavier, because he would not only be a son, he would be the beginning of a nation. And this path was full of pain. The silence of a father, Ishak, was growing old. His eyes were becoming weak. According to narrations, he could no longer see clearly. But what is interesting is this: as his eyes weakened, his insight became stronger, because some people do not see with their eyes, but with their hearts. As the final scene approaches, Ishak now knew his mission was coming to an end. But the real story was just beginning, because the life of Yaqub would not be ordinary. One day, one of his sons would be lost. He would cry for years, and he would be tested with the heaviest form of patience. But that was the beginning of another story. Now we come to the most critical point. Is the life of Ishak just a story from the past? Or is it telling something to our lives today? Because the real matter is not to hear the story, but to understand it. The Quran gives serious warnings about Ishak, whose story is misunderstood in the Torah. In this part, we will discuss this important topic, so please listen until the end of the video. In history, there are some names that gather so many layers, so many marks from different hands, that over time, the real person beneath those layers becomes invisible. Ishak alayhi salam is one of these names. The Jewish tradition read him in one way. The Christian tradition interpreted him in another way. Islam came and removed those layers one by one and revealed a completely different face underneath. That face did not belong to any nation, nor was it under the control of any tradition. That face belonged to a servant devoted to the greatest truth of the universe. The Quran mentions the name of Ishaq alayhi salam 17 times. This number is not random. Each verse opens a different window about him. Each one looks from a different angle and highlights a different truth. This repetition in the Quran is not just narration, it is construction. Step by step, it builds who Ishaq is, why he lived, and where he belongs. And the first stone of this construction is this: Ishaq was neither a Jew nor a Christian. At first, this sentence may sound simple, but when you look at the history behind it, it carries a deep impact. When the Muslims migrated to Medina, they interacted with Jewish communities who were a significant part of the population. It is reported that the Jews said to them, "You are unlettered and ignorant. Our ancestors, Ibrahim, Ishaq, and Yaqub, belong to our tradition." This claim was both about identity and superiority. The Quran responded like this: "Or do you say that Ibrahim, Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub, and the descendants were Jews or Christians? Say, do you know better, or does Allah?" Baqarah 140. This question is a challenge, but it is not harsh, it is sharp. It is not meant to crush, but to make people think. Allah presents the simplest truth in the most direct way. The Jewish identity in its known form developed around the 6th century BC. Christianity came after Isa, but Ibrahim lived around 2000 BC. How can he belong to a tradition that appeared 1,400 years after him? Ibrahim was neither a Jew nor a Christian, but he was a Hanif Muslim, and he was not among the idolaters. Al-Imran 67. And Ishaq was a branch of this tree. He was nourished from the roots of his father. He was a continuation of that pure Tawheed line, that clear path of oneness. The Quran emphasizes this truth again in the scene of Yaqub's final moments in Surah Baqarah. "Or were you present when death came to Yaqub, when he said to his sons, 'What will you worship after me?' They said, 'We will worship your God and the God of your fathers, Ibrahim, Ismail, and Ishaq, one God, and we are Muslims in submission to him.'" Baqarah 133. This scene is a clear summary of the chain of prophethood. Yaqub is on his deathbed, his sons are around him, and the only question he asks is, "Who will you worship?" Not wealth, not land, not power, only worship. And the answer of his sons is clear: the God of Ibrahim, Ismail, and Ishaq, one God, and we submit to him, we are Muslims. Now let us look more closely at how the Torah views Ishaq, because this comparison makes the true portrait of Ishaq even clearer. In the Torah tradition, Ishaq is the least highlighted figure among the 3 great patriarchs. The story of Ibrahim covers a large part of Genesis. The story of Yaqub is long and dramatic. Ishaq, however, seems to be placed between them. According to some commentators, he is like a bridge between Ibrahim and Yaqub, almost passive, almost in the background. On this point, Islamic scholars make a very accurate observation. The Torah was written by the descendants of Ishaq, and naturally they highlight the strongest link in their lineage. But this hides his true greatness, because when you look at the Ishaq of the Torah, you sometimes see him as deceived, sometimes passive, sometimes as a figure shaped by events around him. But when you look at the Ishaq of the Quran, you see an active fighter of Tawheed, a strong prophet, a chosen servant with strength and insight. So where does this difference come from? The Quran's understanding of prophets is fundamentally different from that of the Torah. In the Quran, prophets are given the quality of Isma. They are protected from major sins, weaknesses, deception, and betrayal. This does not make them less human. They feel fear, sadness, and tiredness, but they do not commit lies, deceit, or injustice against Allah or people. The Torah, on the other hand, presents prophets in a much more human way, sometimes even as morally problematic figures. Ibrahim presents his wife as "my sister." Yaqub uses deception. Dawood commits adultery. Suleiman marries women who turn toward idols. These narratives are shaped for a theological purpose. Salvation comes not from human merit, but from the one-sided grace of God. The weaknesses of prophets make this grace appear even greater. Islam does not accept this theology. The grace of Allah is indeed great, but this does not mean that prophets have moral weaknesses. They are pure characters who serve as examples for humanity. Ishaq in the Quran is a spotless prophet. He does not deceive, he is not deceived, and he does not surrender to weakness. Another critical point of difference is the issue of sacrifice. The Torah clearly states that the one intended for sacrifice was Ishaq. Take your son, your only son Ishaq. Genesis 22:2. The Quran, however, does not mention a name in this scene. The son who was to be sacrificed is not named. Most Islamic scholars conclude that it was Ismail, because after the sacrifice story, Ishaq is given as good news, which shows that Ishaq had not yet been born at that time. Now let us return to the qualities that the Quran gives to Ishaq, because these qualities are the brushstrokes that draw his portrait in the clearest way. First, he was given as good news as a knowledgeable son. Zariyat 28. Not only beautiful, but knowledgeable. Not only strong, but wise. Knowledge is one of the main qualities of prophets, because knowing Allah, understanding existence, and distinguishing truth from falsehood are only possible through knowledge. Ishaq was a prophet equipped with knowledge. Second, he is described as someone with strength and insight. Sad 45. When these two words come together, they define the strongest tool of the message. Strength is firmness in stance. Insight is the depth of seeing the truth. One who is strong but blind runs in the wrong direction. One who has insight but no strength sees the truth but cannot speak it. In Ishaq, both were together. Third, he is described as sincere. Sad 46. Sincerity is the essence of all actions. The Quran describes it as a pure quality, meaning something clean, pure, and without mixture. Every action done not for showing off in this world, but with awareness of the hereafter. The message of Ishaq was filled with this sincerity. Fourth, he is counted among the chosen and the best. Sad 47. Being chosen by Allah is not only a reward earned by a person, it is also a responsibility. To be chosen means to carry more. Ishaq carried this weight. Fifth, he is mentioned as someone who was given blessings. Safat 113. How was this blessing measured? Not only by his own life, but by every prophet who came after him, by every prostration, and by every moment the chain of prophethood continued. The blessing of Ishaq did not end with him, it kept growing. Now when we place this portrait from the Quran next to the one in the Torah, we see two different pictures. The Ishaq of the Torah, partial, passive, sometimes deceived, sometimes unclear. The Ishaq of the Quran, complete, active, chosen, protected, and blessed. This difference is not only a historical discussion, it also shows how the two religions understand humans and Allah, and how this understanding is reflected in their view of prophets. Let us also look from another angle. Why does the Quran speak about Ishaq so often? His name is mentioned 17 times, while many prophets are mentioned much less. There is a strategic reason for this. At the time the Quran was revealed, Muslims were interacting with two major people of the book communities, Jews and Christians. Both placed Ishaq at the center of sacred history. The Quran accepted this common ground while also correcting what was misunderstood. Muslims were told to migrate to Abyssinia, where they would meet a Christian king. That king also knew Ishaq from the Jewish tradition. When they later migrated to Medina, they faced Jewish communities directly. The Quran defined Ishaq correctly for both audiences, opening a door for dialogue for Muslims, while also placing that door on a correct foundation. This is one of the remarkable features of the Quran. It is not only a book of belief, but also a text that goes deep into history, connects past societies with the present, and builds a strong foundation for dialogue between religions. And Ishaq is one of the most important stones of this foundation. He does not belong to a single people, nor to a single land. He is the symbol of a life devoted to all humanity, and the Quran preserved this symbol as it is, without distortion, without misreading, without turning it into a tool for political interests. And we granted him a truthful mention among later generations. Maryam 50. This verse is short but very heavy. Allah took the memory of Ishaq under his own protection. He did not allow history to distort him. Within the pages of the Quran, with his name mentioned 17 times, the true face of Ishaq has been preserved until the Day of Judgment. Think about a life. It started quietly. It was born with a miracle. But it continued not with noise, but with depth. The life of Ishaq was not full of loud miracles. He did not break idols like Ibrahim. He did not split the sea like Musa. He did not bring the dead back to life like Isa. But still, his influence continued within all of them. There are some people who never step onto the stage, but everyone on the stage is their work. Ishaq was one of them. When you look at his life, you notice this. He did not create crises, but he managed crises. He had conflicts with his people, but he did not lose them completely. He faced oppressors, but he did not hold hatred. And this is a very rare balance. In the Bible, Ishaq is often described as a more passive figure, especially in this event, the dispute over wells. In Genesis it is told, Ishaq digs a well. Another tribe comes and takes it from him, and Ishaq does not fight. He goes to another place, he digs again. It is taken again, he leaves again. And in the end, he finds a place. The Bible presents this not as weakness, but as patience. But from the outside, a question appears. Is this passivity, or is it a conscious strength? The Quran does not tell these events directly, but it gives a general principle. Good and evil are not equal. Repel evil with what is better. Fussilat 34. So real strength is not to react, it is to control. What is taught today? Defend your rights. Do not step back. Be strong. But the life of Ishaq teaches this. Sometimes stepping back is a greater victory. Because not every battle must be won. Some battles should be left without being lost. When the time comes when strength is gained, victory will come with the will and power of Allah. Allah will give great victories to Muslims, but Muslims will learn not to attack when they are weak, to defend when they are weak, and to gather strength in order to defend. In Mecca, our Prophet ﷺ did not fight. He went to Medina, gathered strength and fought defensive battles there. Ishaq was like this. He had not yet gained that strength, and in his lifetime, Allah would not give him that kind of power. His focus was not on fighting and winning, but on gaining the pleasure of Allah and spreading faith. As it is said in the Hadith, Allah does not give this world even the value of a wing of a fly. He does not look at who has more land or greater political power here. He knew this. The world is not permanent. That is why he did not attach himself to anything as if it would last forever. Do you know what Ishaq's strategy was? To spend his energy in the right place. He did not enter every argument. He did not try to explain himself to every person. He did not respond to every provocation, because he knew some people do not want to understand. And while trying to explain to them, you can lose yourself. Ishaq had now become old. But one thing was very clear. His son was different. Yaqub was very different. He carried a deep patience, and this patience would later turn into one of the heaviest tests in history. Think about a father who feels the destiny of his son, but cannot change it. Ishaq was like this. When he looked at Yaqub, he knew that he would not live an ordinary life. But this knowledge is not comfort. It is a burden. The greatest thing Ishaq gave to Yaqub was not wealth, not power. It was perspective. He taught him how to look at the world. He taught him how to be patient in pain. He taught him how to trust Allah. And this is the greatest thing that can be given to a child. The life of Ishaq was slowly coming to an end, but the legacy he left was just beginning. And this legacy would be tested with great pain. The son of Yaqub would be lost. And this event would change a generation, a nation, even history. But the real question is this: why does Allah test his most beloved servants with the hardest trials? Ibrahim was thrown into the fire. Ismail was chosen for sacrifice. Ishaq was born after a long wait. Yaqub lost his son. Is this a coincidence, or is it a system? The Quran answers, Allah is with those who are patient. Baqarah 153. So the issue is not the test, the issue is the stance in front of the test. You are watching Religious Story TV. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments which country you are watching from. With your support, we want to reach more people and share these Islamic stories and the Islamic videos we prepare from authentic hadith. When you like the video and leave a comment, it helps the video reach more people. In this way, you will also have a share in this goodness. May Allah be pleased with all of you. Inshallah, see you in the next video. May Allah protect you.